Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 764, if I have this correctly, of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Friday, October 17th, 2023, and it is a beautiful day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how's your mental health today? And hopefully I have sound coming through, because it has been a very, very, very difficult tech morning here. And hopefully you can see me. And I already see the kids being happy at seeing our good pal here, Alistair McBear, the boss. It's a performance evaluation day again. So hopefully you can hear me, and you'll let me know in the chat whether or not you do. I'm just waiting because I have a bit of a 30-second delay with you here. Sound is great and clear. Thank you very much, kids and cubs. It's been a day already. Unfortunately, for some reason, as you can see, I'm at the Ottawa Beaver Lodge today, and for some reason, login credentials were not working as they should. So I did manage to MacGyver myself back in to the studio through the cell phone. I cannot seem to do it through the laptop, however. So I think I might be limited today. Well, limited, more than limited. I think today it's going to be just downright impossible to be sharing any screens and showing any clips, which is going to make today's show difficult, because today you really need, I would really need to show you a couple of clips in order to get to the maximum impact. But this is what we got today. So, on fait ce qu'on peut. We do what we can. And I will still, even though I have to kind of change up the entire show on the fly, hopefully I will be able to do it in a manner that is rather seamless. But I am sure, DAMFAM, because you are wonderful and kind and all of those good things, that you will indulge me and grant me a little bit more patience, as you already have, clearly given the late start, in order to get the show to you today and get as much information as I can to you today, and hopefully maybe save the clips for another episode if I have a way to get back into the subject in another way, and then make it worthwhile. But yes, I am struggling today. I won't lie. Oh my God. Oh yes, the teddy bear's Dave. For the people wondering, that's well. Let's bring him on here. Let's say so we can say hello. This here, Kits and Cubs, for people who are not aware, is Alistair McBear. Alistair, because of course the lovely plaid smoking jacket, and of course we put him up here so everybody can see him doing his hard work of supervising and managing and making sure that we are doing everything as we should here at the Beaver Lodge. He's a tough boss, but very fair, very fair. Plus, he gives the best hugs, truly does, and he's a great listener too. All right, before we get into it, let's see who do we have with us today. Kits and Cubs, look in here. We have Kit and Cover. We have Kit Elaine saying good morning, everyone, and TGIF. Yes. Thank God I'm frazzled. We have Kit Uncover with the Beaver and Grizzly joke. Why did Grizzly and Beaver march together in the No Kings protest? Because paws and claws unite for the cause. Love it. Love it. Not so much, I don't know if it's so much of a joke, but it definitely is a rallying cry. That's for sure. Remember, on the 18th, No Kings marches all over the United States, of course. This is the second one, but this is happening all around the world as well. And there will be marches in various cities in Canada. So if you want to do some democracy over the course of the weekend, look up your local protest. Do a search on the web and find out where your local protest is, and come out and march. All right, let's see, who do we have? We have the Breens with us as well. Good morning to both of you, as we do have Kit Jilliard and Kit Bucky. Good morning to both of you. Kit Hyper T 007 is in the chat as well. Good morning to you. And we have Bom dia, gente, hoje e sexta nessa manhã está frio. I'm gonna guess good morning, people. How, I'm not sure what hoji e sexta is, and nessa manhã está frio. I'm gonna guess this morning is chilly, and he will let me know if I got that right. We have Kit Kat with us. We have, who else? Kit Lane saying that's a brisk 6 degrees Celsius where she is, heading to 18 today. We have, let's see, still scrolling through. Kit Grace with us. Kit Argosy Acres with us as well. Yes, Kit Bucky telling us about the late Ace Frehley, original guitarist for Kiss, who passed away here in the chat, with a quote saying, if I knew I was going to influence thousands of guitar players, I would have practiced more. Well, at least he realized it. Kit Linda M is with us saying good morning as well. Who else do we have here? Kit Argos Acre says the sky is shockingly red/orange this morning. Oh, wow. That must be a sight. We have Kit's Chris with us. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining. Keep rocking. Okay, who else do we have with us in the chat here? Kit Playing with 3D is with us this Friday morning. And let's see who else. Oh, we have Chris with a little bit of poetry. Roses are red, mornings are tough. Douglas reminds us we're strong enough. Smart talk, good laughs, and civic pride. Wow, the Daily Beavers are morning guide. I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you. I'm going to have to find a way to go back into the chat once the show is over and sort of clip that. Can I clip that now? I'm going to just take a little check here. I can't clip that now. Okay. I don't know where I'm going to be able to post it at the moment, but I've Control-C'd it, and that way I will be able to keep that, because that's really good. I could maybe even use that as some promotion somehow. Thank you, Kit Chris. We have Kit Grace with us as well. We have Kit Swanky Frankie, being very happy that it's Friday. Kit Ill Today is also with us. Good morning to you, dear one. And still scrolling through. I have to do it on my laptop, so it's a little slower today. Scrolling. Yes, the beaver's scrolling. We have Kit Toronto Dan with us as well. And we have still scrolling. I think that's everybody today, unless somebody slides across the plate. Oh, Kit Saucy, the Sauce Boss is with us. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. And did I miss anybody? Because things seem to skip forward there for a second. No, I think I have everyone. All right. Good morning to all of you. The gang is all here. Oh, no, Kit. No, I lied. Kit J. Crick is also with us. Good morning to you. And I think that is it today. And yes, Kits and Cubs, I see you in the chat talking about probably what is the biggest news, at least for those of us who are fans of all things Canada and maybe fans of jumping on a little bit of a bandwagon when things get good. But yes, Kits and Cubs, after a bit of a shaky start in this leg of the quest for the alleged World Series, the Toronto Blue Jays yesterday scored another victory in Seattle, even though their away record this year is not so hot. So the series, Kits and Cubs, is tied at 2 each. So it's now a best of 3 as the series heads back to Toronto. I would assume, I could be wrong, because I heard that there's another game today and that the opening time is really early in the afternoon. So I'm just going to go give that a little check here. Oh, yes. So we would probably be in the afternoon if you're on West Coast time here. But the match will be at 6 o'clock about in Toronto. So it is going back to Toronto, no day off in between. And yeah, the Seattle Mariners and Toronto Blue Jays will be at it again today. And yesterday's victory was a pretty good one. The bats were ringing 8-2 for the Toronto Blue Jays last night. So after a rather shaky start, the Toronto Blue Jays have outscored the Seattle Mariners 21-6 in the last 2 games. So I don't know if the first 2 games the Blue Jays just needed a couple of extra days rest or took a extra long nap and then decided to show up for the series. But it's 2-2. So they're back, baby. And that's the kind of stuff that we like. So there'll be a lot to cheer for. And because it's 2-2, well, we know that we're getting not 1, but at least 2 more games. Because I can math. So since we are doing it, and I'm not sure that my singing voice is warmed up, but hell, you've survived the first 2 with my voice not warm up. So one more time, Kits and Cubs. Okay. Blue Jays, everybody with me. Let's play ball. That actually came out better than the first 2 times. Yes, I am so excited for this. Again, total bandwagoner. Did not watch any games during the regular season. It's not particularly my sport, but I do love it come playoff time. If the Blue Jays are doing well, and back in the day, the Expos, I would sit back and watch. And I have gone to see a couple of games live, actually, the Expos games back in the day. So it's not like I'm have a complete aversion to baseball in any way, shape, or form. It's just that, well, you know, I'm a curler, so I like watching paint dry in other ways. I'm just kidding with y'all, Kits and Cubs. I'm kidding with you. All right, let's get into the show. I don't know how to start with this, to be totally honest, because yesterday, the Prime Minister did another strategic move. In that, and they've been campaiggning on this, so it's not like it's a complete surprise or anything or out of the blue. But as you know, Pierre Poilievre and the conservatives are complaining slash bragging, uh, come bragging, that Mark Carney is allegedly stealing all of their ideas. And despite the fact that he is stealing all their ideas and implementing them, Canada is, we are supposed to believe, is still completely and totally terrible, which kind of makes me wonder about the soundness of the ideas. I mean, if they are your ideas and you're bragging or complaining or bragging and complaining simultaneously that Mark Carney is stealing them and putting them into effect and you don't like the results, then, like I said, what does that say about your ideas? Maybe it's the ideas, conservatives. But strategically, uh, it's a smart play in the sense that Mark Carney, given that a lot of people are viewing him as a pretty much a progressive conservative under a liberal banner, is essentially doing conservatism for the conservative things that he is doing better than the actual conservatives, mainly because the Conservative Party of Canada has abandoned conservatism and is doing a completely, entirely different thing that they're branding as conservatism, but actual conservatives do not recognize. In fact, yesterday on Twitter, there was a gentleman who had responded uh, to something that we had posted, and this person considers themselves uh, definitely conservative. Definitely conservative. Even said something of the sort like, "I'm as conservative as can be," or something of the sort. And he doesn't recognize the party at all, at all, at all, at all. And that's happening more and more these days, unfortunately. Um, I grew up with, of course, progressive conservatives, but with the notion that conservatives, uh, yes, might be a bit more law and order, yes, on social issues, um, somewhat progressive, but not as progressive as other parties, you know, dragging the heels a little bit, but not against moving in a progressive manner on social issues, fiscal responsibility, allegedly, so that we could have the funds to do the things and to do right by Canadian citizens or the portion of Canadian citizens who are not able to provide or do everything for themselves. As Mr. Grizzly often says, in a society, you have to realize and accept that there's going to be a certain segment of society that will never be completely independent. And, you know, in that case, we have to have supports for those. And this is true of every single society around the world. There are going to be people that need extra help. In fact, um, um, there was somebody else, I think, yeah, it was a conservative MP, Aaron Gunn, who was asking, you know, uh, why do we need all these programs that have all these things tailored for absolutely everyone? Why can't we just have one size fits all programs that treat everybody equally? And then, of course, you know, that means that somebody has not learned the difference between equality and equity, right? And you know, I think we, you know, if you're online, we've all seen that meme of three people. I think, you know, there's a fence and there's three people on the fence and there's a baseball game on the other side and they want to watch it. And there are some crates, I believe 6 crates. And instead of giving everybody 2 crates each, because one person is so short that even with 2 crates, they can't see across the fence, and one person is tall enough that they only need 1 crate to see across the fence, or don't need one at all. Um, that you know, the person who doesn't need a crate, even though would be entitled to 2 if there were 6, because that would be equal, decides to not have a crate and make sure that the person who's shortest has an extra one, so that all 3 of them can see the match. So the difference between equality and equity. So, a basic fundamental rule of society is that you are going to need individual, in order to have collective equality, is you also need to have individual equity. Because as human beings, even though we are all human beings, each and every individual one of us is different from the other in some way. And therefore, each and every one of us have distinct needs that apply to us as individuals. And therefore, treating everybody exactly the same does not make for an equitable society. Like, this is Society 101, and apparently, and it's a feature, again, of every single society, but apparently we have to teach this stuff to our conservative elected officials, because apparently they don't know, are not aware, or they know and they are aware, but they have to pretend that they're not in order for what it is that they are trying to do to, they hope, work. But yeah, in this case here, this person wrote to us, I think it was with what's going on, I basically said, you know, there's no bottom when it comes to conservatives on the thing that happened yesterday. There's nothing they won't say. There's nothing they won't accuse anyone of. Anybody who's been online who's been accused by conservative of being a pedo, for example, right? There's nothing they won't accuse people of, right? Back in the days that we had Paul Martin, they said that he supported child porn. Over the past few years, everybody is a pedo or everybody is an anti-Semite. If they dare mention anything about going on in Palestine and how there are people dying there too. Um, uh, the CBC is against us and is bought and paid for. Everybody's bought and paid for. Nothing is the typical stuff that we get from the conservatives lately. And this person responded, "There has never been a bottom. That's why I won't vote for them. I'm as conservative as it gets, but this no longer is a conservative party. It is borderline fascist party." To which I had responded, "We've been saying that since we started on the show, that there's not much genuinely conservative about the Conservative Party, or what calls itself the Conservative Party of Canada. Canada needs more." It's one of these things that I say when we talk about, the fight for equal rights for the rainbow community. I say often the last thing that the rainbow community needs is yet another rainbow person standing up and saying, "I want my rights." We need some non-rainbow people to be joining us and saying, "Hey, why aren't you giving these people the rights?" Right? Because we need more numbers. In this case, the last thing that we need is yet another liberal or NDP or green or blockist or communist or socialist or whatever you identify as, saying that liberals are fascists. Not liberals, that the conservatives are fascists. We need actual genuine conservatives saying it. That's what we need. Right? We need their own bases to start holding that party to account. So this person, I turned around and I said, "We need more people like you, so thank you." And he said, "You're welcome. All I want is civility in our politics. There's too much antagonism. Nobody tries to work together. That's a problem on both sides, but especially with the right. They don't even pay lip service to working together anymore. I'm tired of this adversarial mindset that the CPC has." And again, responding, "We're right with you on this." And it's not only that nobody tries to work together, but that nobody tries to work together for us. They all seem to prefer talking each other or taking each other down. And we literally pay for it. We get the circus, we get the show, we get to watch it, we comment on it. But all the time that these parties are doing these things to each other or punching down on institutions or trying to diminish our faith in them, they are not working for us. They are working for other goals and other objectives, but not ones that serve us as citizens, as a society. So, well, and over the past few days, there have also been other comments coming from media and pundits and all that kind of stuff, asking, and not only on this particular subject, which I have not revealed yet, I'm showing a little ankle there, I'm teasing by on purpose, but on all other issues, on a whole suite of other issues as well, stating that, these are not serious comments. And Greg McEachern put out, well, I hate to sound like a cliche, but I have a lot of conservative friends that I respect quite much. So to them, when are y'all going to come and pick up your party? You can't be happy with this, right? And there's been even more of that kind of stuff, and it's been coming from various circles. I think there's a journalist, I think his name is Chris Selly, I think it is, the other day made a comment about something. The conservatives, there we go. Pierre Poilievre once again was out trying to teach history to the world about what the Nazis, and this is something that Pierre says often and regularly, even though it's not true, and he's been told it's not true 100,000 different times. The teacher has corrected his copy many times, but he keeps on writing the same answer to the essay question. But Nazi socialism, this is Pierre speaking, Nazi socialism, Soviet socialism, narco-socialism, and all other forms of socialism move at different speeds, but always to the same destination: impoverished hell for many and special powers and wealth for the few. Only freedom, free speech, free enterprise, and free choice empowers all to fulfill their potential and live good and great lives. And he was quoting his own wife's tweet that said, socialism always ends up the same way. And when she was commenting about that, she was commenting about things that the Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, who had won the Nobel Peace Prize, said, basically said. And she just took those comments because, of course, Aneda Poilievre is Venezuelan. Basically, socialism always ends up the same way. And then Pierre decided to expand on that, and that had Chris Selly, who writes for the National Post, if I'm not mistaken, that liberal rag, noted liberal rag, asking basically, why do you do this? Why do you do this? And all the minions were out, like little Wyatt Claypool out there going, no, you don't understand. And then trying to explain Nazism, socialism, and the link or no link between them to all of us. Wyatt Claypool, may I remind you, young man, not yet 30, not that age has anything to do with it, but not yet 30, who wanted to run for the Conservative Party of Canada in the last federal election and was denied by the party. Says, no, we're not interested in you. And maybe one of those reasons is because you're someone under 30 who online purports to be able to explain to all of us what Nazism and socialism really is, and that you understand it and can explain it better than those who have lived through it, or those who have studied it all their lives. Yeah, not particularly impressive. And then to that same thing about Nazism, socialism, and all that kind of stuff, Robin Urbach, not a liberal. There's always the option not to tweet, telling Pierre, could you please shut up? You're not helping. Not every thought you have needs to be expressed. Yeah. And I think as well, we had Andrew Coyne in there as well, giving a little comment about Pierre Poilievre and his comments, that type of stuff. And, Andrew Coyne, it's not the first time he's expressed not having any time for what it is Pierre has to offer. But Andrew Coyne pointing out deficiencies for lack of a better word, with what is going on with Pierre. Pretty sad, but in a way that caused me to actually turn out and say to Mr. Coyne, like, thank you for pointing it out, because again, the last thing that we need as progressive Canadians is yet another progressive person in the media suggesting that Pierre is not suitable for the job. We need people in conservative media doing that. And with what happened yesterday, I am hoping that our major media institutions and those who run them will come to the conclusion that there is something very, 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 very wrong with our leader of the opposition, and might decide that his best before date is has long ago passed. My ear to the ground, based on stuff that I'm listening to, also seems to indicate that Pierre may not be feeling as secure in his position as everybody once thought he did, because he has a leadership review coming on in January, and that a lot of this performative stuff that he appears to be doing of late may have something to do with that. But it seems that he is leaning into it so much that he is making certain members of his party uncomfortable. Take that for what it's worth, a grain of salt with a salt lick, all that kind of stuff. Because we've heard this kind of stuff before, right? We've heard stories back in the day when Jenny was still there about, you know, MPs being told what to do, where to stand, what to wear, what to say, what not to say, and lots of punishments being dished out. But the difference between then and now is then Pierre was, and the Conservatives were leading in the polls, and it was looking very much like they were going to form a government, and particularly a majority government. And therefore, the minions had a vested interest in remaining in line, because should Pierre and the party have won, then there would have been goodies to hand out, like ministerial positions and drivers and salary boosts and responsibility that come with media time and camera time and all that kind of stuff. And they wanted it, so they let themselves be treated that way, hoping that they would be rewarded later on. Well, since then, Pierre has lost the election, got fanjoyed out of his seat, needed a do-over, and assuming, well, we have a minority parliament, so it can't fall at any time, but assuming this minority parliament lasts as long as the previous one, which almost went the full term, save half a year, that's a long time without having any goodies to hand out. And that might make it such that people are less inclined to be obedient or to take abuse in the manner that Pierre and Jenny, as a tag team, have become rather infamous. So, is there upheaval, slight turmoil within the party? We're hearing, like I said, reports from pundits from what they're talking, but it's off the record and all that kind of stuff, and not much of it is percolating to the surface that we can see yet. However, there's enough that pundits and journalists are talking about such things. And how would I put it? It seems to be affecting some decisions by the current leader of the party here. Now, there have been several instances of this party in the recent days, and of course, their whole online media faction, punching down on a lot of things Canadian. The food program, school food program, has been one that they're punching down a lot. There was a very active campaign over the past 4 or 5 days. How would I put it? To claim somehow that there was a time before 10 years ago where all parents, all the time, were always able to feed their children, and there were no children ever that went to school hungry. We all know that that's not true. There have always been, at any point in time in history, people who have not been able to afford to feed their kids. And throughout history, there have always been some people who, unfortunately, have made other choices with their money to spend on other things than providing for their families. Right? You don't have to, if you studied Canadian history while you were in high school, you learned about the coureurs de bois back in the days, who would go off for months and months logging. But certain of the loggers started sending the checks for the work to the wives rather than to the men, because the men would go and drink. Because after the workday was done, what was there to do? And then they'd come back home, and then there wouldn't really be anything. So there have always been people that make less than judicious choices with their money and not having feeding the kids priority. And then there have always been people, despite the best intentions, and they themselves choosing to go without. I know that was the case for my mother when I grew up. Sometimes she chose to go without so that I could eat. They still don't have the ability to make sure that their children go to school every day with a full belly. So you got some conservatives trying to pretend that this is a new thing. We never had this problem before Trudeau. And oh my God, isn't it so terrible that we now have to resort to socialism to feed children? Oh my God, children of all people. And then, ironically, there were images coming out at Thanksgiving where Pierre was allegedly at a food bank, we assume, with a box of food, bringing it to them, where Mark Carney was in Egypt for the Gaza Peace Summit. And then you had conservatives going all around. Oh, see, two leaders. This is definitely a question of style. One person is flying all around the world, going to that Gaza Peace Summit, even though he had absolutely nothing to do with the peace, taking all the credit. Conservatives, that's another thing that they like to do. They like to claim that Mark Carney is taking credit for everybody else's work while he does nothing himself. They claimed during the campaign that he was taking credit for Jim Flaherty's work when he was the Governor of Bank of Canada and Flaherty was the finance minister. And all I remember from that time is that Jim Flaherty being elected again when the Conservatives got their majority and presenting a fall economic statement that tried to kneecap the per vote subsidy for political parties, and making a couple of little changes and saying that's all we needed to get the economy on track, and then coming back to us a month later and saying, whoops, oh, we didn't see the 2008 crash coming. Because when they did because advanced data about 3 months before something's going to happen starts showing the turn. And so they saw the turn happening in July, and then or June or July, and then they said, hey, we're going to have a snap election here. And then they got their majority in early September, and then we had the crash soon after that. And then Jim Flaherty had to present to say, oh, sorry, I goofed up. We're actually going to be running a $35 billion deficit. And then came back later and says, oh, no, it's actually going to be $50 billion or greater. And at that time, that was the largest deficit ever recorded in Canadian history. We've had larger ones since because COVID, but unlike the 2008 crash, and the 2008 crash was bad, COVID was the worst public health and economic crisis Canada has faced in about 100 years. So, a crash or correction that happens more frequently versus the greatest global pandemic since the Spanish flu, that shut everything down in many places all around the world, if not all around the world, for a substantial amount of time. And therefore, we had to do extraordinary things given the extraordinary situation. But now that that's in the rearview mirror, we forget. The Conservatives like to forget or omit or edit out of the history that there was this extraordinary thing that happened and just look at the numbers and say, oh my God, he was so terrible. So we had them accusing him of trying to take credit for that. And then, of course, then we had Pierre coming up and saying that Carney should apologize for the devastation that he had done in the UK. It's like the great situation, the improved situation that is there now has nothing to do with Carney. He's trying to take credit for that because he ruined everything. And then we went and looked at the numbers and we found out that that was not true. Right? And then, so now the food program, they're bashing down on that. And it's like they want to look at it as a bad thing as opposed to flipping it and looking at it as a good thing. And whereas, they look at it as, oh my God, it's socialism. And, let parents feed their own kids. Let parents decide on what nutritious food their kids are going to eat. Don't let the government feed your children. And I'm watching Pierre, the pictures of Pierre coming into the food bank with free food. And I'm like sitting there, it's like, well, wait a minute, aren't you guys the party that's against free food? Or is this a question of you guys being okay with free food, just not if it's for children? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you're bashing the Prime Minister because he's in Egypt, because he was invited, like 20 or something other world leaders were invited there who necessarily weren't involved in all the minutiae of this 20-point peace plan, but who have expressed support for it. Mark Carney was in the Oval Office expressing support for it. And you're praising Pierre, who shows up allegedly at some dinner with food for the homeless or for whoever. And I'm thinking, it's funny because if the roles were reversed, I could see you praising Pierre for very ably kissing Donald Trump's ass and criticizing Mark Carney for yet more virtue signaling by bringing this food. Right? So it's amazing how conservatives who would consider the same act of virtue signaling if Trudeau had showed up to Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner with a box of food and brought it, or decided to work a shift at a homeless shelter in the kitchen serving food, as being a photo op or as being virtue signaling. It's not when Pierre does it. And that the Prime Minister of Canada, because he's not conservative, going to a peace summit to which he was expressly invited by the person staging the summit, is somehow trying to take credit for some work that other people did. But if Pierre were there, it would be like an incredible honor and show of his leadership around the world. Confirmation of his leadership around the world. So you have to understand with conservatives, the thing that they're complaining about, it's almost never about the thing. It's almost never about the thing. Because if they actually cared about the thing, they would have solved the thing instead of complaining about it. We had Denise Batters, senator, all over the web the other day, complaining about laws that protect children, saying that we fought for 10 years for these laws and I can't believe all these things are still happening for children. And again, I'm sitting and I'm going, bullshit, boo-boo kitty, because if you actually had fought for these laws for 10 years, we would be protected by the laws that existed by the time you were out of office. But the Conservative Party of Canada under Harper was one of the most constitutionally overturned by the courts governments we've had in Canadian history. Every single time the Conservative Party of Canada under Harper passed a law that was then deemed unconstitutional was yet another way that they were trying to break the law in the process of creating new law. In other words, they said that they were protecting us, but what they were really doing was removing some fundamental rights. And because all those laws got overturned, well, they never really lasted, so they were never really real laws. So we were never really protected. But conservatives definitely, once those laws were overturned, made it their business to run from coast to coast to coast, raising lots of money for themselves, claiming that there were activist judges and all that kind of stuff. It was the same thing with the pipelines when the courts were telling them what to do to get their pipelines, that you needed to consult. The conservatives kept on saying, oh, well, we do not want to consult with Indigenous people, so we're going to keep on doing it their way, and then their pipelines never got built. And then, of course, again, it was activist judges and all that type of stuff. Because, once again, they refused, the party allegedly of law and order, refused to follow the law to get their project done. So they couldn't get a pipeline, and they refused to follow the law in passing laws that allegedly would have kept us safer. And therefore, the laws were overturned, and we had no laws. Right? If you're complaining about it when the other guy is doing it, but you don't complain about it when your guy does it, what are you saying? Recently, Mark Carney made an announcement having to do with the RCMP and the RCMP officers. There was a bunch of them behind him, and people were complaining about that. Oh my God, look at the way he's abusing of the RCMP and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, Doug Ford recently had the OPP behind him for a whole bunch of stuff. Doug Ford specifically wanted Ron Tavener, a friend, to be the head of the OPP at one point. The Conservatives didn't complain about that. So again, you don't have a problem with politicians using police forces or police associations, and don't even get me started on all of the police associations that are endorsing conservatives, because police associations should not be endorsing anyone politically whatsoever, ever, 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 ever. There should be no union of police and government. Our law enforcement, in terms of law enforcement and courts, legally should be independent from governments. So they have no problem with it. It's not the fact that they have a problem with politicians using policemen as a backdrop, because they do it all the time. They just have a problem when the Liberal does it. So, and then we had more conservatives as well punching down on the CBC and stuff. We had Conservative MP Kyle Seaback, who's been an MP for a while and has been a less than impressive one. We've talked about him on the show a few times, and every time that we've had, it's never been flattering. It's never because he's done anything good for us. And gave 2 interviews, one to CBC and one to CTV, and with a CBC claimed that CBC tried to give me a hard time, but with the CTV one, had nothing bad to say about Vashi Kapelos. And now we know that Vashi Kapelos can take someone down pretty hard. We showed a really brilliant interview of her doing it just the other day. I listened to the interview with Mr. Seaback. There was nothing going on. David Cochrane, I think we're getting a little familiar with him now, the way that he does his journalism. He's not prone to flights of exaggeration, but he does remember things. Right? It's not like he does an interview one day and somebody says something, and then 2 days later interviews somebody else and then forgets what the person 2 days ago said. He'll bring it up. He'll mention it. If there was something that happened historically that has been proven, because you're saying this, but this is the reality. This is what happened. He will do some live correction. He will challenge. Well, conservatives don't like that, so apparently Mr. Seaback claimed, because, again, conservatives love to punch down on the CBC, that this was a CBC thing rather than a good journalism thing. And of course, if you listen to the interview, Mr. Seaback's answers were far from fulsome, far from direct answers to direct questions, and far from satisfying. But it's the CBC, right? So conservatives love to punch down on Canadian institutions. And I remember a time, along with the fiscal conservatism and all of that kind of stuff, one of the hallmarks of the conservative brand, of the progressive conservative brand in Canada, was that they were the defenders of institutions. They were pro-institution. School food program, CBC, the justice system, Supreme Court. Punch down, punch down, punch down, punch down. And, well, yesterday, it was the RCMPee's turn to get it. Yeah. Yep. Prime Minister was out making a justice announcement. As you know, Pierre Poilievre has been crying and crying and crying, jail not bail, jail not bail. Ironically, there was a moment like that too, because, well, we didn't talk about it on the show, but the sentences finally came down for Chris Barber and Tamara Licht, or Lick, or whatever her last name is. I don't really care anymore, to be totally honest. And, well, they got conditional sentences, house arrest, probation terms, all that kind of stuff. Far from the amount that prosecution was asking for, but more than what their own lawyers were claiming for, saying that they should just go home with no more consequence. Well, that's not what they got. They did get some credit. Tamara Lich, I think, got a little bit of credit for time served. I think for Chris Barber, there's still a legal action. They're trying to go over to seize his truck. But they got sentences that pretty much every lawyer was telling us, for those of us who wanted the book thrown at them, who wanted jail, not bail, for them, who wanted harsh sentences for them, as harsh as conservatives ask for everybody else. We didn't get it. And we were told by lawyers who knew their stuff that we wouldn't get that. Don't put our hopes out there, even though the Crown was asking for 8 years, whatnot. We're not going to get anywhere near that. We didn't get anywhere near that. They didn't lie to us. They told us the truth. This is how our justice system works. And, Pierre came out in defense of them in his tweets. So it's like, oh, jail not bail unless the people who have been found guilty, they've been found guilty and are being sentenced, unless they're alt-white. Then it's not jail, not bail. Then it's, oh my God, I can't believe how they're being persecuted and the justice system is just so unfair. But once again, putting his thumbs on the legal system and sending the message that once again, we cannot trust our institutions. They got less than they deserved. They got way less than they deserved for the damage they caused, in my humble opinion. But that was too much. Even that was too much for Pierre Poilievre. That's pretty telling, because this is a guy who campaigned specifically on wanting to use the notwithstanding clause to keep people in jail longer. This is a man who leads a movement that wants to deport a whole bunch of people if they happen to not be Canadian citizens, if they happen to protest for a cause that the Conservatives don't agree with. or maybe at a protest where there's some petty crimes, vandalism, lighting a garbage can on fire, that type of thing, that happen. But Pierre feels that two of the people that counseled fellow Canadians to break the law and to hold a city hostage for all intents and purposes for close to 4 weeks, that this was just too much. Again, making it very clear where it is he stands on crime. Not all crime. Not all people. His tough stance, they need to come out in a box stance, these crimes are so terrible that we must invoke the notwithstanding clause in order to deny you your basic fundamental rights. That what Tamara Litch and Chris Barber got, well, that was just, it was too much. It was so unfair. It was a travesty of justice. This is the guy that we have. He's not serious in any way, shape, or form. It's constant red meat. And with each passing day, it's even more and more MAGA. And it's getting MAGA to the point that we cannot tell the difference between Maple MAGA and MAGA USA. It's the same points. It's the same arguments on the same things. And they are coming closer and closer to each other in succession. And like I said, to the point now that you almost can't tell the difference in any way, shape, or form. It is concerning. And it's another thing that definitely has some members of the Conservative Party, again, if we're believing the word on the tweet, and certain MPs feeling particularly uncomfortable, though none of them are saying it yet on the record, with their face and a name attributable to what it is that they are saying. One of the other things that Pierre has been going on that's very MAGA is the DEI stuff. He's been into that. We have October 13th. Sign here, end DEI, restore the merit principle. I hate to do this, but I'm going to because we have to. When Pierre became the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, the first thing that the guy decided to do was name himself not one, but two deputy leaders. The first of these deputy leaders was Melissa Lantsman, female, Jewish, lesbian. The second one is Tim Uphull, Sikh, definitely not white, wearing an ostentatious religious symbol on his head. If you were in Quebec and a member of the CAQ, that's what you would call it. He didn't elevate two white men. He elevated two people that if they had been elected in other parties, he would accuse them of being DEI hires. They are still the deputy leaders of the party to this day. So Pierre right now wants his base to believe that he is anti-DEI when he has a female Jewish lesbian as a co-leader and a Sikh non-white man as another co-leader. But he wants you to believe that he's against DEI. Those two appointments, we are supposed to believe, are merit. We've seen the performance since then. But everybody else, if you happen to exceed to a certain position and you are not conservative enough, or what looks conservative enough for Pierre, then you are automatically DEI and you did not get there on your own merit. Wonder who that reminds us of. South of us. That was October 13th. 4 days ago. Pierre was doing that. Jeez. Unbelievable. I'm trying to find here the Tamara Leach thing. What he had to say. Must be a while back now. Was sometime last week. So, well, Pierre tweets a lot. Which, you know what? I'm not going to complain because I happen to be a prolific tweeter as well. So, but still. Oh, yes. And then we had Michelle Rempel Garner making a whole claim about birth tourism. We can't have that. That's October 9th. Where else are they trying to remove birthright citizenship? Oh, yeah. That's south of us as well. Yeah. Okay. So another Trump thing. Always saying Canada first as well. That's another thing here. Pierre, he's just incredibly terrible, I have to say. And then he's been on a kick. October 9th. Liberal hacks will do anything to rationalize Carney's duplicity and hypocrisy, citing Lawrence Martin of the Globe and Mail as being a liberal hack. So also attacking the media. Not new for Pierre, but he's back at that again as well. And I'm wondering where that comes from. Celebrating Charlie Kirk. I wonder where that comes from. He did that the other day again. He gave an interview to an organization called Northern Perspectives, in which he, well, again, had praise for Charlie Kirk, even though that's not our issue in any way, shape, or form. He has no relevance to us in any way, shape, or form. The only duty we had to react was, oh my God, isn't it terrible that somebody died in that way? Because, political violence of that nature, kinetic violence that takes away people's lives, is not something that we support, even for people we don't agree with, even for people that we think are awful and terrible. But that was the extent of what it is that we had to say. Because Charlie Kirk is not one of us. As Canadians. It's not our issue. It's not our circus. But that was another one. There we go. October 7th. Tamara Lich and Chris Barber peacefully protested the imposition of emergency measures that the federal court found to be unlawful and unconstitutional. Instead of pursuing rapists, drug dealers, and other monsters, the Crown sought lengthy prison sentences. Justice Perkins Maffei rightly rejected the Crown's request and sent Tamara and Chris home to their families. No, he didn't. He didn't send them home to their families. He gave them conditional sentences that they serve at home. But they were not just released. sent home. They were given conditional sentences. We must get to a justice system that ensures the security and freedom of all Canadians. I wish Chris and Tamara a peaceful and happy life. Tamara Lich and Chris Barber did not peacefully protest the imposition of emergency measures. They did not peacefully protest because they were tried in court and were found guilty and got sentences. You don't get sentences for peacefully protesting. These were not peaceful protests. And yes, some of the measures were found to be unlawful and unconstitutional in federal court. We did a specific special on this where we read the entire court decision and provided commentary on the way. I learned a lot about it. Yes, and what we learned in that part that Pierre omits is that while certain things were deemed unconstitutional, the judge had also given prescriptive measures on how those things could be done in a manner that is constitutional. The judge also said that they were using a very interesting legal test that he suggested that other judges who may have much more experience in such matters than he does, he could see them overturning. But this was his best decision at the time. He had also specifically stated that while the CSIS Act was probably the wrong act to have used in our EA legislation, because the CSIS Act is very, very, very specific, that and therefore he had to rule on constitutionality on a certain front. Also went to great pains to make the point that but given the circumstances, he might have done the same thing in the same situation. And that maybe that law needs to be rewritten to use a different standard than the CSIS Act for these types of activities. Because they were definitely outside the bounds. We just didn't have the legal tools to be able to handle this new type of situation. Mass protest in a city that is very heavily foreign funded and amplified via social media. When we wrote our Emergencies Act, we did not have that situation. Maybe this is a little update or upgrade to reflect the current times and current abilities. So it wasn't like he dropped a hammer and said, oh my God, these things are totally unconstitutional. Oh my God, it's such a travesty the federal government did that. It says, yeah, these things were unconstitutional, but like this. But the thing that you wanted to do was not bad. You just did it in a bad way. Had you done it this way, it would have been entirely constitutional. So they could have frozen the bank accounts anyway. The problem is that they didn't have a third party that somebody could go to present that information. The RCMP was going directly to the bank saying, we're freezing this account. Please do that. There needed to be a step in between. But there was nothing unconstitutional about freezing the accounts. What was unconstitutional is that there wasn't a third party deciding, yes, this account should be frozen, this shouldn't. That's all. Right? Next time, do it this way. Have this type of check and balance in the system, and you'll be fine. There are levels, right, of things being unconstitutional, and that's about as mild as you can get. It's still very important that needed to be done, because again, you want to protect everybody's civil liberties, and therefore you have to make sure that there is process and procedure for it. And there was a step that was skipped, and a very important step. But it's not like the ultimate action and the goal that was being pursued were inherently unconstitutional. So yeah, some measures were deemed to be unconstitutional. and unlawful. And the irony of all of this, of course, is Pierre complaining that those laws and that people would be found guilty or charged under them. And, well, they weren't charged under those. They were charged under a whole bunch of different, it was mischief and counseling people to, break the law and all that type of stuff, which doesn't fall under these types of things. Right? So they may have been protesting that all they wanted, but they did not show up to peacefully protest the imposition of emergency measures. Those impositions of emergency measures happened around February 14th on Valentine's Day, but they had showed up several weeks before to protest something. It wasn't the emergency measures because they didn't exist at the time that they showed up to protest. Pierre also wants you to forget that. He's just sort of blending it all together. So Pierre is absolving them of their crimes. He says it was a peaceful protest, and they were there to protest those things, not precisely what it is they did show up to protest. He's revising history, making it up. But the guy that wants to use the notwithstanding clause to enact laws that he calls unlawful and unconstitutional against you has problems with people who vote for him and support him being subject to unlawful and unconstitutional laws, which he should. Everybody should be opposed to people being subject to unlawful and unconstitutional laws all the time. That's not Pierre. He ran on violating the Constitution. He ran on it. It was a central plank. Well, in that interview that Pierre granted to Northern Perspective, there were a couple of other things that went on. And he had some choice words for the RCMP. That were, I have to say, very, very, very concerning. Pierre has done a lot of things, has said a lot of very odd things. A lot of them intentionally inflammatory. No doubt about it. But in this interview, and like I said, this is where I wish I could show you the clip of him actually saying it, so that you could see it for yourself. Now, Northern Perspective, when they were promoting, for lack of a better word, this interview, were trying to promote it as Pierre having shown a sensitive side because he was fighting back tears when he was talking about a woman, allegedly, who had spent her last $8 buying a conservative membership so that she could vote for Pierre. This, I'm not going to say that Pierre's a liar, but it pushes my, instantly pushes my, I'll take, of all the things that never happened, this didn't happen the most for 2000, Alex button. I know the memberships were $10 because I bought one so that I could vote against him. And they encouraged everyone to vote. So I don't know how she spent her last $8 to buy a membership unless he pitched in the extra toonie. But also, it seems that that particular story, a while back, when Jenny told it, it was that she was complaining that she wanted to buy a membership but couldn't because she had cash only, and that these were card-only transactions and didn't have a card. So when it originally happened, back in the day, Jenny Byrne saying, yes, because she didn't have a card. And all memberships must be bought on card so that we have the record, not cash. And now it is, that story is, she had $8 left to her name, and that's all she had. And she spent it to buy a membership. To vote for me. Cue tears. Choking back tears. It's such... These are the people I'm fighting for. This is why I do what I do. Her last $8, she wanted to vote for me rather than eat. Or something like that. We are supposed to believe. Right? Yeah. Not the most inspiring thing. Was another interview with softball questions. Another interview with a media organization very friendly to Pierre because, well, Pierre doesn't like doing actual real interviews, of course, because, well, people hold him to things and ask him to clarify and ask him to expand on things. And, well, as we've learned during the campaign, Pierre is not particularly good without a script, unfortunately. But according to the video, and I can't show you the clip, so I'm going to have to read what it is that he said. But he is sitting in a chair, very sort of lump back and casually, just casually throwing stuff out. And he decided to say this. If the RCMP had been doing its job and not covering up for him, then he would have been criminally charged. And again, he probably violated the criminal code and the SNC-Lavalin scandal. These would have normally have led to criminal charges, but of course, the RCMP covered it all up, and the leadership at the RCMP is just frankly just despicable when it comes to enforcing laws against the Liberal government. That was his quote. Now, again, I mentioned something earlier about being okay when other people do it, but not okay when other instances are. We had the whole kamikaze thing with Jason Kenney, but we didn't hear Pierre Poilievre rush to a camera and claim that the RCMP was covering up for Jason Kenney for taking so long to do the investigation that it essentially didn't matter because Jason Kenney had been thrown out of a leadership position by his own party before the RCMP could even finish the investigation. Because had Mr. Kenney acquired his leadership through illegal means and had the result of the investigation come down early, well, maybe something could have been done to remove Jason Kenney from power, given that he acquired it illegitimately. But that investigation took forever and eventually came up with not much. And now we have in Ontario, Doug Ford, who is currently being investigated by the RCMP for the Greenbelt stuff. The investigation has been going on for a long time and we haven't been getting any updates, but we don't have Pierre rushing to a mic accusing the RCMP of covering up for Doug Ford. Doug Ford has managed to, he's in his third term now. The Greenbelt stuff was in the first one. So the investigation is taking so long that we don't have anything out there that could tell the Canadian public or the Ontario public, don't vote for this guy, he's criminally corrupt, coming from the RCMP. But we don't have Pierre asking why it is it's taken so long and accusing the RCMP of covering up for Doug Ford. But in 2025, now that Justin Trudeau is gone, Pierre Poilievre, out of the blue, because nobody was talking about SNC, out of the blue, claims that Justin Trudeau definitely committed crimes and that the RCMP covered up for him. Now, let's go back in time here. The SNC Lavalin thing was a deferred prosecution type thing, right? Stephen Harper wanted to bring in deferred prosecution agreement laws, wasn't able to get them over the finish line before he lost power, and the Liberals came up and finished the law. So this is deferred prosecutions for companies and directors and all that type of stuff was a conservative idea. And the idea behind it is that there's lots of people working for a company like SNC Lavalin who did nothing wrong. And why should a sentence come down upon a company that will shutter the company and make all these Canadians lose their jobs and their pensions that they've acquired and all that type of stuff if you don't need to, if you can get a judge to say, well, you know what, instead of prosecuting you and imposing tons of fines or whatnot that can shut down your company, I, as a judge, I'm going to prescribe that the company needs to make these types of changes to therefore be in compliance with the law. And you're going to make these changes and you're going to come back to me and prove that you've made these changes, and me as a judge, I'm going to oversee these changes. And if they are done in a proper way, then you will not get prosecuted. And the company won't take a hit and all these people won't lose their jobs and their pensions and whatnot. And if you don't do it to my satisfaction, well, then we go to court. It's a deferred prosecution agreement. At some point, if as a government you're going to decide to go the deferred prosecution agreement route, which is inherently a political and not a judicial decision, right? You're not making this decision for the best administration of the law, for the purposes of the law. You're making this decision so that in the administration of the law, you don't have so many intended adverse and perverse consequences that 10,000 people or 5,000 people end up losing their jobs and their pensions who had nothing to do with the crime. At some point, somebody has to talk about whether or not they're going to go to the deferred prosecution agreement route or not. Now, in Canada, the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General are the same person wearing two hats, which makes communication on this a little more complex. And after all of that happened, there were some specific recommendations to split those two functions, which we as Canadians decided not to do. Why? I do not understand, but we decided to maintain the same system. So the Prime Minister of Canada went to the Attorney General, who also happens to be the Minister of Justice, and said to the Attorney General, I think this might be a good case for deferred prosecution agreement. And then there was all the things that happened after that, all the various accusations. Jody Wilson-Raybould, who was the Minister of Justice and the AG at the time, recorded people surreptitiously. She made a whole bunch of claims, but the one claim she never made, even though she was directly asked, and I believe she was asked this in a committee in testimony, which is sworn. In Canada, we don't make people put their hand on the Bible and swear like they do in the United States, but it is assumed that if you are testifying, you are telling the truth, and that if you don't, you are perjuring yourself, and that there will be consequences. So even though we don't do all the ceremonial thing of putting the hand on the Bible, it is sworn testimony. Sworn testimony said explicitly that while she felt pressured, because, and we can get in the whole thing that if you feel pressured, you should probably resign then. But she didn't. But though she felt pressured, the Prime Minister did nothing illegal. The RCMP investigated and came to the conclusion that nothing illegal was done. But Pierre, still to this day, is claiming that Justin Trudeau did stuff that was illegal to the point that he should have been charged. And I'm guessing sentenced and should be in jail. But not only that, that the RCMP, instead of doing their job, covered up for him. That's the extra new step. That's the new thing. So Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives decided that they were going to administer CPR to a horse they've already beaten to death. Out of the blue. Just so happens this is happening at the exact same time in the United States as James Comey, the FBI guy who made it such that Donald Trump actually won the first election by coming up a few days before the election and said, oh my God, there's these things on the Hillary computer that, not sure that we took a look at. I got to tell you now, got to make it public in case something happens, something comes out of that, and you say, oh my God, you tried to hide it, rather than actually checking the computer to see if there was anything and then making an announcement. Right? Which probably would have been normal order. Oh my God, there's this extra thing. Let's take a look at it. Oh, okay, there's nothing here. Fine. We don't need to say anything then. It says, oh, we found something, making a big announcement, and then finding out after that there was nothing there. But the damage had already been done. That guy who materially helped Donald Trump win, Donald Trump is taken to court and has charged him. And then yesterday, John Bolton, who also worked for Donald Trump at one point, also charged. While Donald Trump's running all around going, don't forget to get Letitia James also trying to charge her. The woman who got the 34 felony convictions case. Yeah. All the political enemies getting it. As this is going on right now, Pierre Poilievre just casually decides to revive SNC and claims that the RCMP, yet another Canadian institution, covered up Justin Trudeau's crimes. Punching down on yet another Canadian institution, trying to get Canadians to lose their faith in yet another Canadian institution. Why? No reason. Not sure why Pierre Poilievre would be talking about Justin Trudeau still. Can't seem to quit him. Not sure if Pierre Poilievre wanted to be Prime Minister one day. I think the RCMP are the people that would be providing his protection. I'm not sure why it is that he would like to claim that they are covering up crimes. Doesn't seem like a particularly smart move on the part of the leader of the opposition. But yeah, that's what he did yesterday. And that caused a lot of people to say things like, yeah, you want to come and collect your guy? Maybe you want to do to Pierre Poilievre what it is you do to Doug Ford during federal election campaigns, that basement that you take him and stuff him into a freezer, bound and gagged, so he doesn't say anything embarrassing to you during your elections. Maybe you want to do that to your own leader. It's absolutely stunning that he would go there and make those types of statements. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to take that back. The statements themselves are stunning. It's unheard of. Because the fact that Pierre Poilievre is the type of guy who would do that is not stunning. Not at all shocking. Not at all surprising. Because, as stated earlier in the show, with this guy, there is no bottom. There is no bottom. Catherine Tunney and Darren Major of CBC News report. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre took aim at the RCMP's independence in a recent interview, calling the National Police Force's leadership, quote, despicable, and accused the National Police Force of covering up for the Liberal government and former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Quote, if the RCMP had been doing its job and not covering up for him, then he would have been criminally charged, the opposition leader said in an interview posted to YouTube on Wednesday. Speaking to the YouTube channel Northern Perspective, Poilievre said Trudeau broke the law when he took a free vacation, a reference to the 2016 Aga Khan scandal. So not only SNC, but the Aga Khan scandal. The Aga Khan, again, a man that the Conservatives made an honorary citizen when Stephen Harper was the leader. I think Nelson Mandela was the only other honorary citizen of Canada at the time. I may be wrong, there might be a third one, but that I remember. And the Conservatives during this whole scandal not only claimed that Justin Trudeau broke the law, but were insinuating that the Aga Khan himself, like this, would have been open to accepting bribes. A man that they made an honorary citizen. And this is not new for Conservatives to turn their backs on people they appointed, because the current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is the guy that Stephen Harper appointed to be the Governor of Bank of Canada, and allegedly, word on the tweet is, wanted to replace Jim Flaherty as Finance Minister after Mr. Flaherty passed away. And then there was Governor General David Johnston. Yes. They also turned on him. Right? So I'm wondering what it is they're going to turn on Mr. I think it is Vickers. I can't remember his first name, but the guy that was head of the security at Parliament on the day that the shooter came into Parliament, and everybody had to lock themselves in, and he was the guy on the security detail who actually took the shooter down. He had some comments about this as well that were not flattering for Pierre, I would say. But they celebrated this man after his heroic feat. In fact, Mr. Vickers actually then tried to enter politics afterwards. Didn't have the best of success in that pursuit, but did still go for it. He was a celebrity for a while for his heroism and for having kept people protected. But even he had some pretty serious issues with that which Pierre Poilievre had to say on this front. Interesting. Interesting indeed. And hopefully I will be able to find that comment from him at some point and read it into the read it into the program. I was trying to look for it here, and can't seem to find it at the moment, but I know that it's there because I tweeted it. Unfortunately, since Elon Musk took hold of Twitter, the search function doesn't work as it used to find old tweets rapidly and efficiently. It presents you everything except for what you are looking for, and then buries the rest in a whole bunch of stuff, and it makes it more impossible. You have to remember specific things that you said. Ken Vickers is his name. There we go. He had to say, I am sickened by the remarks of Pierre Poilievre concerning the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, our national police force. His remarks today are not worthy of someone vying for the position of Prime Minister of Canada. I am just so mad, as we say here in Trout Brook, New Brunswick. So yeah, Kevin Vickers, also former ambassador of Canada to Ireland. and leader of the Liberal Party of New Brunswick at one point. And this is his comment, I guess, in terms of his former capacity as Sergeant at Arms of the Parliament of Canada. He also is a Master's of Law, so he understands the law. He has a problem with these comments from Pierre. That should tell you everything that you need to know right there. But back to the article. The Conservative leader also said the former Prime Minister probably broke the law during the Lavalin affair. Probably. Did he or did he not, Pierre? Quote, these would normally have led to criminal charges, but of course the RCMP covered it all up, he said in the interview. The leadership of the RCMP is frankly just despicable when it comes to enforcing laws against the Liberal government. Asked about the comments Thursday, RCMP Commissioner Mike Duham defended his team and denied allegations of political interference. The Mounties under former Commissioner Brenda Lucki did examine the possibility of charging Trudeau with fraud after investigating his 2016 family vacation on the Aga Khan's private island in the Bahamas. The police force ultimately decided not to pursue a criminal investigation of the trip due to a nuance in the law, according to internal documents concerning the investigations that were made public in 2022. The relevant section of the Criminal Code says no government employees or officials can receive or demand gifts from a person who has dealings with the government unless they have the consent in writing of the head of the branch of government that employs them. As Prime Minister, Trudeau theoretically could have given himself permission to accept the paid vacation. At the time, Conservatives said Trudeau granted himself a get-out-of-jail-free card. The vacation was also the subject of a separate investigation by then Ethics Commissioner Mary Dawson, who almost never found during her 10 years as an Ethics Commissioner anything wrong with what the Conservatives did, despite the fact that the Conservatives later on pleaded guilty in court to election cheating in their first electoral win, with an asterisk, in the In and Out scandal, and despite the fact that they had a cabinet minister go to jail, Dean Del Mastro, and despite the fact that they had associations with people like Bruce Carson and Arthur Porter, who also were sentenced, she never found anything ethically wrong with the party. But on her way out, her very, very last decision was the Aga Khan one, and oh boy, did she find something wrong with that one, because it was a Liberal leader. We could put a lot of stock in this decision. Mary Dawson concluded that Trudeau breached 4 sections of the Conflict of Interest Act, but said that could have been avoided if he had checked with her office beforehand. So basically, one could presuppose that since the Aga Khan was a pallbearer at his own father's funeral and someone that Trudeau considers as an uncle, that he was just going to stay with friends, because this was a established relationship that had been pretty well established and was already in the public realm. So why feel the need to go ask the ethics commissioner? Now, we learned since then that you should probably dot every I and cross every T, even though it's completely obvious, still go through the motions anyway. He didn't. So he got wrapped on his fingers for it. But she specifically says that had he checked with her, it probably would have been okay. And now Pierre Poilievre is saying, oh, he broke the law. Wow. Crazy. The RCMP documents also noted that if the ethics commissioner had decided Trudeau committed an offense under the criminal code, she would have been required to notify the relevant authorities. She did not. Because he did not. Because that never happened, the RCMP wrote, it can be reasonably inferred that Dawson did not believe Trudeau committed a violation. The Mounties have said repeatedly there was insufficient evidence to lay charges in the SNC-Lavalin affair, which rocked Parliament back in 2019. The Ethics Commissioner found Trudeau once again broke the Conflict of Interest Act when he tried to influence his then Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould to overrule a decision by the Director of Public Prosecutions to not grant a deferred prosecution agreement to the Quebec-based engineering firm SNC-Lavalin, since rebranded to Atkins Realis. So in this case, There needed to be a conversation for this to happen, but the problem that the Liberals did is that they didn't establish a policy or directives for clear lines of communications in instances where this would happen, so that nobody can claim that there was a conflict after the fact. I'm not sure that that has been done since. But if you're going to create a situation where people can use deferred prosecution agreements, and that there needs to be some communication about it, then you need a policy about how you're going to communicate about that, so it cannot be misinterpreted that this is an attempt to influence. Also, irony with that is that Pierre Poilievre himself is the beneficiary of a deferred prosecution agreement when he himself was found to have cheated in an election. So it's not that Pierre has a problem with deferred prosecution agreements. He benefited from one. He might have a criminal record today were it not for a deferred prosecution agreement. I know. The layers. The layers. Oh boy. The former Prime Minister contravened Section 9 of the Conflict of Interest Act through a series of, quote, flagrant attempts to influence Wilson-Raybould, the report said. In 2023 statement, the RCMP said its sensitive and international investigations unit conducted an assessment, spoke with and collected information from a variety of sources, quote, and examined the matter in the most thorough, objective, and professional manner. At the time, the commissioner said the investigation was made more challenging by a lack of access to cabinet confidences, but he's said he's, quote, very comfortable with the decision not to pursue criminal charges. Responding Thursday to Poilievre's accusation, Duhem said, quote, there was no interference. I don't take any orders from any political individual, he said. And as far as his comments in regard to senior management, I would invite Mr. Poilievre to meet with us and meet with the people who run this great organization. I'm sure Pierre will get right on that. Like he'll get right on getting his security clearance. Oh, sorry. Was I being petty again? Duhem, who oversaw the RCMP's national division in federal policing before getting promoted to the top job in 2023, was attending a news conference hosted by the Prime Minister at a detachment in Toronto, where Carney reiterated a campaign promise to hire more than 1,000 new RCMP personnel. Brian Sauvé, president of the union that represents the RCMP members, said as far as he's seen, there has been no political mastery of the RCMP or political interference. Quote, the members and leadership of the RCMP take their responsibilities seriously and operate with professionalism and integrity, said the National Police Force head. In a statement sent to CBC later in the day, Poilievre's office said, quote, RCMP officers play an important role in protecting our borders and keeping our streets safe. Conservatives have consistently stated no one should be above the law, period, said the statement. So you said nothing. You didn't respond directly to what Mr. Duhem said. While the RCMP is accountable to the government, it is meant to have operational independence, especially in investigations, to shield against political interference. Pierre wants you to believe that that's not the case anymore. Yeah, unfortunately. I guess we should spend a minute or two talking about what it is that the Prime Minister of Canada was actually there to do. And say, according to Marco Vigliotti, editor-in-chief of iPolitics, Prime Minister Mark Carney says the Liberals will introduce legislation next week that would make it harder for people accused of serious crimes like sexual assault and violent theft to stay out of jail while awaiting trial. The proposed bill will also eliminate conditional sentences for some sex crimes, allow consecutive sentences, and increase penalties for organized retail theft. I am wondering on allowing consecutive sentences, whether that might not be eventually deemed unconstitutional as cruel and unusual punishment. Quote, this is how the federal government can help municipalities and provinces get criminals off the streets, disrupt and dismantle criminal networks, reinforce the justice system with tough and comprehensive bail reform, and build a stronger, more secure Canada where everyone feels safe, Carney said Thursday during a press conference in Toronto. The bail changes would require people accused of serious crimes to justify why they should be released pending trial. These reverse onus rules are already in place for crimes like murder and armed robbery, and the Liberals passed legislation in 2023 at the urging of the provincial premiers that expanded their use for cases involving repeat violent offenders and intimate partner violence. Under the current law, it's up to the Crown prosecutors to convince a judge that the defendant shouldn't receive bail. Critics like Ontario Premier Doug Ford have argued that judges are too lenient and regularly release repeat offenders, allowing them to commit even more crimes. Of course, Doug Ford fails to mention that he hasn't been doing his part in making sure that there are enough spaces for people, because according to the latest statistics, it seems that 80% of people that are in jails are people who are awaiting trial before they have ever even been convicted of anything. So if the Conservatives want us to increase that to 90% or 100% of people, which we probably should not be doing, but if they wanted to do that, they should be putting pressure on provincial premiers to build the spaces to house all these people that they want jailed, not bailed. But Pierre didn't have a word about that. Incredible. The expanded reverse onus rules will apply to violent auto theft, break and enter, human trafficking and smuggling, assault and sexual assault, and extortion involving violence or violent threats, Carney said. Quote, simply put, these charges will keep violent repeat offenders of these crimes off our streets and out of our communities. Conservative justice critic Larry Brock said he was disappointed with the Prime Minister's announcement because it didn't mention repealing the principle of restraint, which requires judges to release offenders at the earliest opportunity and with the fewest restrictions as necessary to ensure public safety. But again, Larry Brock not taking into account the reality that if we did that, where would we house these people? Where would we keep them? The places are not there. The Liberals mandated the use of the principle as part of their 2018 overhaul of the bail system. As a former Crown prosecutor, Brock said no meaningful changes to bail laws could happen without removing that language. Quote, the Carney government literally could introduce reverse onus provisions for every single offense in the Criminal Code of Canada, and until such time as they keep the principle of restraint, it's not going to make any difference to Canadians' confidence and trust in the community's safety and victim safety. When asked, Brock said the Conservatives wouldn't support any legislation that keep in place the principle of restraint. So in other words, even though all these laws are things that Conservatives want and have campaigned on, and would claim that Mark Carney stole from them, they are not going to vote for them. They're not going to vote to move the ball down the yard 10 or 15, move the ball down the field 10 or 15 yards or 10 or 20 yards because it's not the full 100 yards. They will refuse progress on these things that would keep people safer because they're not getting everything they want. But they're the law and order party, and they want to keep you safe. They have an opportunity to vote for something that would keep people safer, things with which they agree, but because we're not repealing that principle of restraint. And I would like a serious fact check on what Larry Brock has to say there, because Larry Brock was the man who organized that little video at the beginning of the session when he was at the Justice Committee, saying that he and 3 other CPC MPs showed up for a meeting that didn't exist because he couldn't read a calendar. You'll forgive me, kits and cubs, if I don't trust the opinion of someone who can't read a calendar when they talk about the law, even though that they claim to have been a lawyer. I'm not going to trust that person. When asked, Brock said the Conservatives wouldn't support any legislation that kept in place the principle of restraint. University of Ottawa criminology professor Justin Piché also expressed disappointment in Carney's announcement, accusing the Liberals and Conservatives of adopting American-inspired measures, despite extensive research and evidence showing they failed to deter crime. He said the reverse onus laws are, quote, un-Canadian because they undermine the presumption of innocence, a charter-protected right, and called for more investments in, quote, supportive housing and other upstream prevention measures. With all the concern around people on bail, probation, and parole, one would think that there'd be robust investments in transitional supports for criminalized people re-entering the community, such as housing, employment, mental health care, and the like, both at the provincial, territorial, and federal level, he said via email. Yet politicians of various political stripes continue to vastly underfund such initiatives and are the first to express outrage when they did next to nothing and it didn't work with tragic consequences. If enhancing community well-being and safety is the goal, we can do better than jail, not bail. Unfortunately, our political leaders are simply not up to the task and prefer sloganeering over substance. The Liberals' proposed bill would also allow judges to hand out consecutive sentences to offenders convicted of multiple serious crimes, likely meaning longer prison stays. Concurrent sentences allow offenders to serve out multiple sentences at once. The Supreme Court in 2022 struck down a law that allowed judges to order consecutive periods of parole The Supreme Court in 2022 struck down a law that allowed judges to order consecutive periods of parole ineligibility for those convicted of multiple murders, saying it violated the Charter's protection against cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. There we go. I just mentioned that earlier. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has repeatedly said a conservative government would use the notwithstanding clause to override the decision. Carney said the legislation would also restrict the use of conditional sentences in some sex crimes. These sentences allow offenders to avoid prison time if they consistently meet certain court-determined conditions. A legal nonprofit group that advocates for gender equality said this was the wrong approach to address sexual and gender-based violence, and called for investments in prevention and community-based responses. Kat Owens, interim director of the Women's Legal Education and Action Fund, or LEAF, said tough on crime legislation is not the answer because it targets the same people it claims to protect. Quote, members of marginalized communities, including survivors of violence, end up bearing the brunt of these responses without seeing improved safety, she said in an email. The House is currently on a break and will resume sitting on Monday. The Liberals oversee a minority government and will need the support of one other opposition party to ensure the passage of the legislation. As part of the proposed reforms, Carney said the Liberals were hiring 1,000 new RCMP personnel. So there you go. That's what we have. That's the latest decision. Strategically interesting for the Liberals because, once again, it seems that Mark Carney and the Liberals are going in and are taking legitimate issues of concern for the Canadians, on which the Conservatives seem to be scoring points, passing legislation, serious legislation, to address those points, thus removing the issue off the table and taking something away from Pierre Poilievre, forcing him, it seems, to go to even more and more and more extreme pronouncements and statements in order to create some contrast or difference between him and the government. And each one of these subsequent instances of he is being pushed further and further and further to the right by an allegedly progressive conservative prime minister who keeps on politically manspreading to take up more room on the center right. And Pierre Poilievre, since he must oppose and bash everything and can't celebrate anything and can't acknowledge anything at all as being positive, therefore must take another step to the right. And the things that he says get loonier and more inflammatory. And hopefully what the situation is going to happen is that it's going to make a lot more of his membership of his party uncomfortable and could result in an increasing chance of him not being confirmed in January when the leadership review comes. We can only hope. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We still didn't get the time to talk about more democracy around the world. Some things going on, so hopefully be able to do that on another show. Sorry, Kit Bucky, I know you really wanted me to talk about this stuff, and I really wanted to talk about it too. But I'm trying to do my best to keep these under 2 hours, even though I might not succeed today, unless I really speed through the outro here. So kids and cubs, thank you for joining us today. We hope that you liked our content, and please share it with those you know, because you are influencers in your circles, and we really appreciate it when you do. If you would like us to help you, kids and cubs, we would like to do that. Because you might be on the go and don't have time to listen to the show live because you are very, very busy. Well, thanks to the Ray Girl, you don't have to worry about that. You just have to scan this QR code and go to our pod page, podpage.com/the-true-north-eager-beaver, with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you click on subscribe, when we have a new audio cast for you, it comes to your favorite podcast feed, and then you can download us and take us with you so you can remain informed and take on the day. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us, please go down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page and click with our buttons like, share, and subscribe. That helps us with the algorithm, and kids Cassie and Elaine would approve. Thank you for that. And if you would like to help us in yet other ways, kids and cubs, the QR code that is about to appear will bring you to our coffee page where you can make a donation to the Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, because a moist beaver is a happy beaver. And I do have a cup with me, and I do have the water on the side, but I forgot to put the water in the cup at the beginning of the show, and therefore I cannot take a drink right now. But I'm going to try and fix that right now, because I do want you to see my cup, because it's a happy cup. There you go. Yum, yum, yum. Keep your favorite beaver moist. A little contribution does the world for us, and we are very grateful. Now, if you're buying Canadian, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address, and you can make a direct bank transfer that way. That way, the CE bros in the tech sector don't get a cut of your money, and we get 100% of your donation, so we can do more with it. So thank you for your support. We appreciate every dollar. And if you cannot support financially, please know that the gifts of your participation and attention are the ones that matter the most to us. So please write to us at truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com to let us know what you think about the show, or offer us some guest suggestions for our interview project. We really appreciate that. Thank you for everything you do for us. It all gets put back into the show. Because democracy is something that you do, forever-canadian.ca. If you're in Alberta, you know what to do. Become a canvasser, make a donation to them, because they incur some cost to do the hard work. But most of all, do sign that so we can get that Citizens Initiative question on the ballot. Petition ourcommons.ca, petition E-6679 to bring about more honesty in politics. Please go there, sign it, and share that. Get your friends to sign it. It's very important. Over 30,000 signatures to date, trying to make that grow. And if you haven't had a chance yet, please listen to our interview with Mr. Fed Sanchez when he talks about the initiative. We had that last week. I think it's interview episode 81 or morning show episode 757 if you're looking for it. But please go take a look at that very informative interview we had with Mr. Sanchez. And of course, kids and cubs, we have municipal elections in Alberta on the 20th of this month, in Quebec, I believe, on the 2nd of next month, and a territorial election in Yukon on the 3rd of November. So please get informed on what you need to do to be able to participate in democracy there. All right. Words of wisdom, kids and cubs. I do not really have anything for you other than, when a tech gets in the way, take a deep breath and persist, because eventually it will work. Hopefully. At least this week, that has been the case for me. Eventually it did work, and I'm very glad it did, because I really love my DAMFAM time. I really do. It means a lot to me. It's like an essential part of my day, like breakfast. I just need you. You're my calcium and my riboflavin. All right, kids and cubs, it could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And yes, kids and cubs, I am going to try to show up later tonight so we can do a little bit of an online house party for Kit Sharon. So please follow the socials, and I will be able to have another time for that, announce a time for that. I'm trying to make sure that I get to see Tony Vera today, so that's the only reason I can't give you a time today, because we haven't picked a time in the date, at the time in the day in which we're going to do that specifically today. But once I have that, I'll be able to communicate on socials when we're doing that. Okay, kids and cubs, at the count of 3, please say, Mr. Beaver, can you please cue the cock? On 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear you. Oh, you are wonderful, kids. Thank you so very much. And I will do that. And I did my best to keep it under 2 hours. I tried to go through that extra quickly, but with the cue the cock part, that is definitely going to throw me over the 2 hours. So, oh well, I tried. But since you asked so kindly, kids and cubs, You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs. Well, since I'm past the 2 hours, why not take a little moment then to celebrate some Canadians who have made us proud. It's our short track speed skaters because the season has gotten underway, and we had the short track season opener in Montreal. It seems that the first two events of the year will be in Montreal, and Canada had an extremely good season last year, being the best short track team in the world. And we are just a few months before the next Winter Olympics, so Team Canada is looking to go in strong. According to Olympic.ca, Canada kicked off the short track season in emphatic fashion, earning 3 more medals on home ice at the ISU Short Track Speed Skating World Tour at Maurice Richard Arena in Montreal on Sunday, after already claiming 4 on Saturday. Courtney Sarow claimed a second victory of the weekend as she topped the podium in the women's 1500 meter, defeating Korea's Kim Gilly and Corinne Stoddard of the United States in the race. Kim Boutin also captured a silver medal in the women's 500 meter with a time of 43:10. Canada's third medal of the day came in the mixed relay as the Ice Maples finished with a bronze medal in a time of 2:44.40 behind the Chinese Loons, who finished on top in 2:39.53, and the Dutch Lions finishing in second. Canada was promoted to third after a penalty to Korea. On Saturday, Sarow and William Danjidou both captured gold, while Stephen Dubois added a bronze in a thrilling start to the 2025-2026 campaign. Danjidou, 24, continued his remarkable rise with a wire-to-wire performance in the men's 500 meter, clocking a winning time of 40.35 seconds. The Montreal native edged out Italy's Pietro Sigel by a fraction of a second, while compatriot Stephen Dubois secured bronze. Fellow Canadian Maxime Laoun finished just off the podium in fourth. So there were 4 people in the final, and 3 of them were Canadian in the 500. Wow, that's a pretty spectacular. Sarow followed with a composed victory in the women's 1,000 meter, posting a time of 1:28.18 to edge South Korea's Gilly Kim and American Corinne Stoddard. The Moncton native controlled the pace through the final lap and surged ahead in the last straightaway to secure gold. Dubois capped a stellar day for the home team, returning to form after an injury-affected offseason. His explosive start and late race control helped him hold off teammate Laoun to claim a well-earned bronze in the men's sprint final. Canada also earned a bronze in the women's 3,000 meter relay. So lots of medals. And for figure skating fans, the Grand Prix series starts today. I believe you can watch it on a CBC Sports Player. I believe they start in France, but again, pre-Olympic season for Canadians. We are stronger in the pairs events, the ice dance and the pairs skating. So far, nobody in singles that we know of that is making a big mark at the moment, although there's a lot of competition in the men's section because unfortunately the men and the women's single skaters did not finish top 10 at the World Championships last year, so we're only going to get to send one skater to the Olympics in each of these categories. And there's a fierce competition. Keegan Messing has even come out of retirement to try and take a crack at it and to get to go to the Olympics again. But in pairs, I believe we're going to get to send 2 teams, and in ice dance, we're going to get to send 3 when we go to the Olympics. So for figure skating fans, I believe somewhere mid-afternoon, if you go to the CBC Player, the first stop on the Grand Prix circuit starts today. All right, that's all I got for you, kids and cubs. And like that, I must be gone. And I have no idea actually how to end the show where I had they moved things around, and the stop button is not where it used to be. Oh, there it is. Okay, just found it. All right, kids, I'm gone. Ah.